Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa Vayuko, and welcome back to Personal Pans, conversations about belief, transformation, and all the weird and wonderful things that we experience. It's been a while. I have so many episodes and a backlog and a back catalog, incredible conversations that now that I feel like I'm coming out of neurodivergent burnout, I can bring into the world. The first one is with Halo Quin. What a delight to revisit this conversation. She is an author, a storyteller, a witch, the inventor of the Goblin Circus, and she also wrote a song about the Baba Yaga that moved me. I was so excited about it that I literally fell out of my chair. And I left that in the episode because I think that's important. We had an incredible conversation about ADHD and the power of storytelling, Baba Yaga, and I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I do.
But so the PhD is in storytelling, is that
The
correct?
PhD is philosophy, is the subject.
Yes.
And the topic of it is around storytelling. So the title is In Search of the Holy Story. It's nothing about religion.
Right.
But it's about so Heidegger's philosophy of art, and I know Heidegger's controversial now,
Sure.
and the phenomenology of storytelling. So the actual, have you ever been in a storytelling circle where you're sat and someone's telling a story, or you're telling a story and people are listening? Yeah.
Yes.
Like a
Yes.
bardic space.
Yes.
And that experience, the magic of that experience where you're in the space, you're sharing and creating that world together,
Yes.
listener and teller. And there's this unity and enchantment, and that was what I was writing about in the context of philosophy and like rationalized logic, critical thinking stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
First, I love this because Herbert Marcuse is one of my favorite writers, and he wrote The Aesthetic Dimension, and then of course like Schiller, The Aesthetic Education of Man. This idea of there are these creative non-rational spaces where we are connected with something, again, that like libidinal experience, this like transcendent almost experience that I don't all right, like I'm excited already to talk about this. Like write down more notes. Yes. We have a million different directions to go in.
I'll bring up goblins again later, don't worry, they'll come back.
Okay.
They always come
goblins back. So that yeah. So what was the inspiration? Because I mean, again, I've read your book and talking about like your fairy experience, but this idea of, I mean, one of your many books.
I was gonna say, which one have you read? Is it the one that's just come out? Or
yes, the one that's just come out.
I have a copy. This one. Folktales, yes! Fairies and Spirits. Yay!
Yay!
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. I'm really proud of this one. Anyway, carry on. You've read that.
I've read it. It's very good. Well, and again, I like because you talked about your experience of it engaging with fairy folk from a very early age. Did that inform your interest in stories, or was that just some of like, because again, ADHD, multiple interests concurrently running, like, yeah. So I'm curious about how that has evolved.
Okay, so do you want like, I'll try and pull out the thread. There may be tangents.
I would hope so.
Okay, good. Like rabbit warren of mind. Okay, so as I said, as or as you said, I said, whichever way around it works. As a child, right from my earliest memories, absolute fascination with fairies. And while I was growing up, I was fed the imagery in ways that made sense to me at that point, and the stories that fit at the sort of ages that I was at. Yes. So I like, my family gave me a lot of things with the flower fairies on. So lots of the flower fairies, very pretty, delicate, what have you. And I'm like, that's lovely. That's only a part of it. I know that's only a part of it because I can feel the things in the bushes. Yes. But that's a part of it. This is the best image I have for that energy. Yes. And of course, Tinkerbell.
Yes.
So I'm actually, people have a lot of hate for Tinkerbell. And it makes me really grumpy. This was my first ever magic wand.
Oh,
It glows in the dark.
oh yes.
It still glows in the dark.
I love
Um,
it.
yeah, my stepdad actually brought it back from me from one of his many work trips, and a pair of fairy wings, you know, the white stuff
Yes.
stretch over wire with sort of silver. I don't have those anymore, but I do still have my wand.
The wand is perfect.
Mhm. And it sits over my bed and just glows at night, which is slightly distracting sometimes.
Sometimes, well, yes, especially with ADHD, sometimes distracting, but also just what a wonderful, again, like symbol. And again, it's your first fairy wand, like your wand. You still have
Yeah.
it, like a symbol of power and connection. And
And that, like, all the way through my childhood, I was drawn to the imagery, and that word was the best word that I had for these spirits. Um, and like I say, people hate on Tinkerbell. They're like, oh, and they put down, they go, oh, I hate this new age. I hear people say this. I hate this new age image of fairies. If you look at the folklore, they're actually really wild and dangerous. They're not like Tinkerbell. And I go, have you seen even the Disneyfied version of Tinkerbell? She tries to kill Wendy. She is
right.
sexy and powerful and dangerous. And
Yes.
that's the Disneyfied version.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then obviously as I got a bit older, I found the stuff by Froud and R.J. Stewart. And so all of Froud Fairy Oracle, if anyone listening, because eventually someone might be listening to this,
Yes.
if you haven't seen the Froud Fairy Oracle, like you're nodding, it encapsulates that wide variety and the energy of the fairy realm and the spirits that are there. You've got the sort of tumbly, grumpy, ugly looking trolley type, gnomey type creatures and the grumpy ones, and you've got the beautiful fairy ladies that are sort of shimmering and shining and otherworldly, and you've got the beings that are somewhere in between, and the ones that look beautiful but are creepy, and that look creepy but are actually really sweet, and there's all of this in there. And I was like, this
right.
this So I realize I've gone off tangent because you'd asked about my PhD. So while I was exploring all of this, I found the Anderson fairy tradition, spelled F-E-R-I, that one. And then following that thread, I'm absolutely immersed in that. Following that thread, I found reclaiming. And a week after my 18th birthday, I'd gotten my results for my college, my A-levels. So I just finished college, I got my results, and went, my mum drove me to my first ever witch camp.
Oh, my heart is so happy. That is amazing.
Oh, I was in heaven. It was brilliant. And it was, that particular camp was twice the size they normally were because they had a couple of big names over from the States. So T. Thorne Coyle was over teaching, and there were some other people there as well who were quite well known. So they'd attracted quite a crowd from across Europe. So this was obviously in England.
Yes.
And we were working with the story of Ceridwen and the birth of Taliesin.
Yes.
So the initiation and the birth, the creation of the greatest bard that ever lived. And that was the first story that I encountered at a witch camp. My first sort of, I'd been to rituals at Avebury because I grew up in Swindon. So I don't know if you know it, but it's like, it's not a particularly exciting place. It's a large town. It's a commuter town. People live there and then work because it's cheap to live, and then they commute elsewhere to work, to play, to whatever.
Got it. Okay.
But it's just around the corner from Avebury. So I could get on a bus, and 25 minutes later, half an hour later, I'd be in Avebury in the stone circle, the largest stone circle. Yeah.
Yes. Incredible.
Yeah. So I grew up going to Avebury once every couple of months just to go and run around and climb on the stones.
I love it. That's amazing.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So there's all of this in the background, and I'd spent a year where I'd gone and camped in the stones for each of the pagan festivals when I was about 17, and met the druids there and met King Arthur and his war band. Have you heard of King Arthur and his war band? No.
No.
He's quite famous. He is not, opinions are divided. He's quite a controversial figure.
Okay.
But he does a lot of campaigning. He has legally changed his name to King Arthur. He legally got granted permission to carry his sword, Excalibur, around with him as a religious item. Yeah. He is openly pagan. His group are openly druidic. So, you know, he does a lot of work on that. He campaigns for the reburial of the ancient dead. So like take them out of museums, which one of my friends is a lovely, lovely chap. His name's Will Rathouse. So shout out to Will. He makes beautiful Iron Age reenactment jewelry. He's an archaeologist. And he argued with King Arthur about reburying the dead. He's like, actually, that one way of honoring the dead, whichever side you fall down on it, but one way of honoring the dead is by learning about them and encountering them in respectful displays and living history things. And that got him, he then got declared a dark necromancer.
Amazing.
So one of my friends is officially known by King Arthur and his warband as the Dark Necromancer.
I would just put that on business cards immediately, and that is how I would introduce myself to everyone.
He got it on a t-shirt, if I remember rightly. And for a while he wore a ring with a big skull on it because he found it hilarious.
Of course.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So
yeah,
he now works in archaeology and mental health, supporting people and things like that. So really decent chap.
Yes.
Did say there were going to be tangents, didn't we?
I'm here for the ride.
Yeah. So 18 years old, end up at a witch camp meeting Ceridwen and Taliesin and all of these amazing witches and practitioners, and going deep on a transformative journey. It was a solid 7 days of magic and ritual and story. And they told me witch camp changes lives, and it really did. It's why I ended up in Wales.
Yeah.
But as a result of that, of course, I'm then deeply immersed in a tradition where the rituals are often woven around stories, and often part of a ritual will involve that sort of side of storytelling, where you're describing and you're talking about parts of the myths and weaving that through. Now, reclaiming is an ecstatic tradition. It's not Wicca based. It's not rooted in that fertility. It's not druid based, so it's not the sort of like the ritual drama. What's the word where you get like magical plays, where people put on a magical play? Enacting the. There's a word for it, isn't there?
There is a word for it, and I've lost it now.
Yeah, it's gone.
Of course, it'll come to me later. Yeah. Yes.
Like so I'm also a member of OBOT. I've just finished the OVATE grade, and I'm about to go into the Druid grade when I get around to it, because
sure.
Yeah. I've applied for it. The point at which I get the paperwork and then hand it back, that's another question. But so
it's just too real. Everything you say is just so resonant on a cellular level. That's why I'm laughing.
I practice being. I basically took a vow of honesty when I was a very small child, partly because I never learned how to lie, but partly because of the stories about the fair folk and fairies. It's like honesty is so important. I'm like, yeah, if everything that you say is true, then And if you know that that is the case, and the universe knows that that is the case, and the spirits know that that is the case, then if you want to cast a spell, all you need to do is say it, and then it is true.
I love this. Yes, of course. Again, energetically, you are resonant only with truth. So you are speaking truth into the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which means, of course, that when I fall into the old shame of I never finish any projects because it takes me longer to finish the projects than it does most people. I either do it in one day or it takes me 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I fall into that and I reiterate those truths as truths, or those stories as truths.
Yes.
And I have to, as everyone does, I have to unpick them.
Of course, yeah? Yes.
I've forgotten why I was saying that. Completely forgotten.
I know, you were talking about, because we were trying to find the word for
Druidry and reenactment.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And the like kind of plays, we're looking for that specific word and neither of us could find it. And then
there was a step. And then there was something about honesty.
Yes.
Oh, that was it. You said about everything was resonating.
Oh, yeah.
And the tangent was ADHD. Now, I speak very openly about my life, my experiences, my ADHD. I obviously, when I got the diagnosis or got referred for the assessment, I hyper-focused on researching it. Yeah. And then built a website online with links to resources for other people to use. I set up a newsletter. It's called Living with Squirrels. I've written a study guide for students with ADHD that just needs, I'm halfway through editing it. I got halfway through editing it about 6 months ago. I need maybe a week of work on it to finish it, and then I can.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm doing this because we are in the minority, and because our stories are in the minority. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That I want people to know that they're not alone.
Yes.
I want people to know that they're not broken neurotypicals. They're perfectly whole neurodivergent people.
Oh, yes. I love this so much. I love this so much. And this, I think this is why I will always, even though this is supposedly a podcast about belief and transformation, it really becomes conversations again about ADHD, about trauma. I love talking about transgressive things because it takes the power away from that and gives power back to people who have felt shame and pain about who they are and what they can't change. Again, ADHD, I am wired this way. I can fake being neurotypical. I can present, I can mask if I need to. That is not who I am. It grates against every part of my being. This is who I am, right? Let's follow. That's why I was like, let's follow every single tangent you can think of that will bring me joy. Will it bring you joy? Great. Let's do that.
Yeah, and absolutely. And the more, so my family, my mum and my brothers are very similar, and so I grew up with these conversations that were tangent rich and and just bouncing around and forgetting what we were saying mid-thing and coming back to it 5 minutes later, and that to me was normal. So I actually genuinely grew up thinking like, this is normal, and I was really, really lucky in that I had the support of my mum in all of it, like throughout all of this. And she's like, you're lovely, you're wonderful, you're great. And so I didn't develop the anxiety about it. But I did get the responses from my peers at school who didn't understand me, who thought that I was weird, who ostracized me. Which meant that when I found witchcraft age 10, I went, I'm a witch. And they all went, what? And they're like, you can't say that. I had friends who were also practicing, and they started getting bullied for it. And they said, right, they came to me and they said, right, we're going to tell everyone we've stopped. We're going to carry on, but we're going to tell everyone we've stopped. And you have to tell everyone you've stopped as well. And we can carry on doing it in secret, but if you don't tell everyone you've stopped, and I'm not going to tell everyone I've stopped because I haven't.
Right.
And they said, but if you don't, then they'll know that we haven't stopped and we'll get bullied for it. So if you don't tell them that you've stopped, we can't be friends with you. And so not only did they carry on practicing in secret, as far as I know, that's what they told me they were going to do.
Yes.
And then lied to other people about it, but they then quietly like bullied me
Right.
whenever other people were watching because I wouldn't lie.
Right.
Because it didn't make any sense to me. I'm like, so what if I'm doing this thing you think is weird? Well, it's fun.
Right. Right. Again, this brings me joy. Why am I going to stop this for other people who don't even like me anyway? Like I don't care about impressing them.
And you know the weirdest bit about it? Every now and then I'd encounter one of the bullies or one of the people who avoided me in school outside of that context.
Yes.
And for whatever reason, I'd often be walking to school late. And every now and then one of them would be late as well, and because I walk to school every day. And one of them would end up walking with me. And it happened on more than one occasion that one of them would actually go, I wish I was as brave as you. I wish I could be who I wanted to be and dress how I wanted to dress and do the things I want to do. And I wish I was that brave. And I'm like, I literally can't be other than this.
That's it.
I don't know how you're not doing, like, it's the easiest thing in the world to just go, you know what? I'm going to do my thing because this is what brings me joy. And if you don't want me in your space, I will go and do it over there.
Right. Right. I'm not going to stop who I am.
Especially not when you've told me you want to be doing it as well.
That's the part I don't understand. Like the doing things in secret, I do that. Again, my trauma background, having to hide certain things, like, yeah, sure. But I also was raised by Polish immigrants, and there's this mistrust of authority that is huge. And also a sensibility of, well, you don't have to tell people what you're doing, just do whatever you want. And so that was ingrained in me early, of especially like with school. I mean, my mom, very anti-conventional education, always put me in just like strange, alternative schools. And even would say to me, like, well, you don't have to like any of this. See, she's like, school is something that you have to get through because you have to earn a degree, you have to get a job. And so in like from the earliest age taught, like, oh, there are certain things that are just like socially expected. You don't have to like it. You can just pretend to like it. And that's only if you want to make things easier for yourself. So for me, it became a game. And like, you're going to think one thing about me. You're going to have no idea what's happening. You want to see all like Kali statues? Those are for me. Yeah. But yeah, that idea of I'm going to stop being who I am and what I want and stop doing what I want. Like, that is not like, I can't stop being who I am. Like I like one of the more notable, again, existential crises in my 20s was that, like, before I had any idea of ADHD, I can't want any of the things that like normal people want. I'm not happy doing any of the things that normal people do. Like, and that like, they seem happy. I don't think that they're happy, but they seem happy, that like missing that like belonging. I was like, well, thankfully it only took like a year or so for me to realize like, oh, they're all miserable. I can at least just be in my corner and do my thing. And it brings me joy. I might not have a community, but again, fast forward 15 years, and it's like, oh, I'm part of a huge community now of amazing people. So good for me. It's just going to take a while.
And that is exactly it. I mean, for me, part of being who I am is being open about it. And like, I think there's a distinction between secrecy and privacy.
Yes.
And sometimes, as you say, like, trauma, for safety reasons, you might need to keep things secret. And I'm going to be utterly screwed if in the near future I need to make things secret because I've been so out about so many things.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
But like that's going to be a bridge that I'll have to cross if it ever happens, and I hope that it doesn't.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between secrecy and privacy, and I talk a lot about things. I've written about my practice, I've written about various aspects of magic. My next book due out in January is on sex magic, right?
Fantastic. Yes.
Well, it's on sexual magic, so it's actually about sexual healing through magic.
Oh, incredible. Yes.
Thank you. Because, and that's short tangent, keep it short. That so many of us have so many issues around sex, and you can pick up books on how to use sexual energy in magic. But before we can do that cleanly, we need to do the work to be all right about our own sexual nature.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Exactly. Exactly. There again, like there's so much, again, individual trauma, social trauma that happens that also disconnects us from our bodies, what brings us pleasure, what brings us joy, you know, to learn that the body, like to be, have this idea forced upon you essentially that the body is not a source of pleasure when it is instinctively a source of pleasure. And so how to get back to those parts of you,
Yeah.
like that's incredibly important, because
How to
again,
come back to safety.
yes, because to go back to what you said about honesty, and again speaking that, like if you want your magical practices to be effective, then you need to get honest with yourself about what you have been through, like what you're feeling about it, and then reclaiming those parts of you that you were taught not to embrace and to feel shame about.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
aligning all of those parts.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that we're all our different parts are working together in harmony towards the same goal, because otherwise we're
Yes.
like a gang fighting amongst ourselves, with one bit going, I want to do this, and another bit going, I want to do something else. And yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
And a lot of our as you said, you talk about trauma, a lot of our trauma is, it will get in the way of that. We've always, all of us, every single person has a lot to unpick.
Yes.
I actually this weekend bumped up against a bunch of stuff that I won't talk about the details because I'm still processing
Of course. Yeah.
it. That I thought I dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sort of pulled it up, and it was just under another layer, and I'm like, oh, okay, I need to deal with this bit before I can step into the next stage, before I
Yes.
can get that little bit bigger.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. And this, and I had this conversation with another guest, and I talk about this with my therapist. Like I've seen her off and on, the same therapist, for about 10 years. Because something comes up, and it's like, all right, I got to reach out because this needs to be cleared, because it's an ongoing process of work. I feel like so many narratives I get really angry actually about like narratives of healing, because it's not like a thing that you go through and you're done. It is an ongoing process, like you said, of unpicking, uncovering, unearthing, and thinking, oh, this is resolved. Like you can work through something, think it's resolved, and then like you said, there's a whole other layer underneath you're not even cognizant of, until something else comes up, brushes against that, and you realize like, oh no, I have to do a whole other archaeological dig to take care of this. Cool.
And some of the parts of it as well, like people talk about healing and getting rid of and fixing and what have you, and some of it is just integrating our wounds and our baggage and our scars and going, actually, these are part of what make up who we are.
Yes.
And they're not necessarily bad.
Yes.
Like
Exactly.
this
Yes.
this fear can be an amazing warning system. I just need to be gentle with myself when it comes up and go,
Yes.
okay, you're an ally. There's a beautiful thing in Elizabeth Gilbert's book Big Magic. I don't know if you've read it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
About living the creative life.
Yes.
And right at the beginning she talks about anytime you go on a creative journey, and it's the same with a magical journey or a journey of self-discovery or anything, you step out into the world, if you want to grow more into yourself or grow in any way, the first thing you encounter on that journey is fear, and your fear is there to keep you safe.
Yes.
And the important thing, you like, your fear is going to be with you anyway. So
Yes.
you may as well go, okay, but you're sitting in the back seat. You can't drive, you can't read the maps, you can sit in the back seat and you're coming with me, and I love you because you look after us.
Mm-hmm.
But you are not having any control over the journey. You can just
Yes.
accompany us and warn us if there's actual danger.
It, again, if there's actual danger,
Yeah.
because I know that I feel like comes up too, and something I talk a lot with my friends about, of, that intuition, anxiety and intuition can feel very similar, but they are ultimately different. And
Yes.
like, because you can talk down your anxiety and check in with it, right? That fear, you check in, like, is this real for now, or is this from then that you're
Yep.
remembering now?
Yeah.
Intuition does not stop. And again, I always think of like resonant frequencies, right? It does ring a little different, can be very close. And again, anxiety can feel so overwhelming that you think, well, this is the real thing. It's like, no, no, no. My fear wants to keep me safe. It thinks this is an unsafe situation. We can step this back and work it through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can go, this is now, that was then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. This reminds you of then, but this is now here.
Yeah.
So let's see
Yeah.
it here. Yeah.
And that so I obviously get overwhelmed, and less now than I used to, because I went through a phase. So obviously through my childhood and while I was going through college and what have you, there were a lot of structures in place. My coping mechanisms were working. I was doing my homework in class because I did my work. So like my classwork, I do it so fast, and then I do my homework that needed to be in at the end of it. And then I'd sit, because I was hyper focused on reading my books. And my teachers let me read in class because I was quiet in the corner.
Yes.
So I focused. I was like, I want to read my book. And if I get through this 5 minutes of work that everyone else is taking half an hour on because they're chatting and they're doing whatever, I'm like, I'll do 5 minutes of work. I'll do 15 minutes of homework that I was supposed to do last night. And then that's done. That's that deadline hitting with the adrenaline and the dopamine and all the things. And then I can read my book for the rest of the class. Like, that's how I got through school.
Yes.
And in fact, it's kind of how I got through my undergraduate at university. Not quite the same, but I loved doing philosophy so much because we were in class debating stuff with each other. It was an interactive, you were just constantly drumming up that dopamine and that interaction, that connection, and the exploration of things and pulling in all the different ideas. So I loved that. The sitting and doing the coursework, not so much. But leave that to the night before and you do it in the night. That's fine. I'm a fast typer. Once I got to my PhD, and I've been doing it for a couple of years, that none of that was there anymore. I wasn't having interactions with other students. I was sat on my own trying to write 80 to 100,000 words.
Yeah.
And at that point, my relationship, my marriage, in about the middle of that, just started to absolutely fall apart. So on top of on top of that, like, then all the stress, everything, my coping skills just went.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I've forgotten why I started talking about that.
And I was so engaged, can't remember. I will
it'll
say
come back.
though, it will come back. Talking about like stress and because I don't know if that was also the time that you got diagnosed, because that, I feel like all of my friends who have recently gotten diagnosed, it was because of the pandemic, because you have all these methods in place. Again, you think, oh, everybody has to make these adaptations, everybody has to make all these workarounds, and so you have all of those things in place, and that works in normal levels of stress. And then there are the incredible levels of stress in terms of marriage difficulties or a pandemic where everybody's in lockdown, and suddenly the normal structures are all starting to fall away, and then all of your coping skills are gone, and you think, oh, I can't even get out of bed. Like I physically can't, I have energy, but I physically cannot get out of bed because my brain will not allow it. To short circuit like that, it is impossible to describe to people who don't have that experience.
Yeah, I don't know how you did. I don't know how to describe that feeling of just when my brain just goes, no.
Right. Yeah, we're just not doing anything today. I didn't consent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, no, you just no. Take the handcuffs off, please. Like, I have things I want to be doing. I want to see my friends. I want to eat because I am hungry. I need to go and pee. Let me go and pee. Nope.
No.
Just no.
Right. Just no. You'll
No.
survive. Just handle it. We'll power down certain systems. Yeah. Yeah.
And like, what do you do at that point? So that was when things started to fall apart. I started going to a counselor through the university.
Mm-hmm.
And the first set of sessions, it was like 10 weeks or whatever it was, 8 weeks, that I saw my counselor, he turned around and said to me, have you ever been assessed for ADHD? And I went, no, don't be silly. I did really well at school.
Right.
A year later, I go back and he says to me, are you sure you don't need to be assessed for ADHD?
Mm-hmm.
And he gives me he points out some examples, and he's like, because I know this other person who does exactly the same things you do in order to cope. I constantly have music going. I have to constantly have background noise. If I'm outside, I'm in nature, I'm okay.
Yes.
But if I'm indoors or in a city, I need to have music going. If I'm in a busy, crowded city, it's to tune out the chaos of the people.
Yes.
But if I'm in my own space, in my flat or in a quiet indoor room, partly it's to tune out the echo off the walls and the buzz of the electronics and the what have you.
Yes.
But partly it's because if I don't have that input, I just stop.
Wow.
And I used to find this, that I'd put on a CD when I was in my teens. I'd put on a CD, and at some point, if I forgot to put it on repeat, at some point it would get to an end and it would stop. And I would, at some point after that, some amount of time after that, I would either find myself singing to myself to keep going, or I would have just stopped. I would literally just have stopped. And my brain would be blank. I'd have no idea what had happened, how long I'd been sat there for. I just sort of, I don't know, like a bird would caw outside or something. And I'd come to and go, how long have I been still for?
Wow.
So
yeah,
meditation is a terrifying thing for me. I'm like, no, I don't want to sit in silence because my brain will shut off.
Right.
It will just go into idle, and that doesn't help anyone. Right. Like, it does that naturally. It just goes to sleep. What's the... Don't make me do that. That doesn't help.
Right. I'm not connecting to anything that way. I'm off. I've been turned off.
Yes. Like, who knows where my spirit goes at that point?
Right.
Like, I have no idea. I'm hoping it's doing something useful, right?
Right. Like, I hope it's going on a wonderful journey.
Yeah, and it'll be fine. But so there's all of this stuff. There's all of this stuff around ADHD and the foibles of our brains and the way that interacts with magical practice and honesty. And I still can't remember why I was talking about stress and falling apart in the middle of it. But I absolutely agree. So many people have found the structures in place over the pandemic that they had that kept them going. And a lot of people have found the stress has given them ADHD type symptoms.
Yes. Yes.
Which is why an assessment is actually important, because it tracks back whether or not those symptoms were present in childhood.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the incredible thing too, especially talking to other people who did similar things to things I did as a kid. And it's like, oh man, it was always there. It was just, I managed it somehow.
How did no one notice?
That's what I want to know. But I think if you're high achieving, people just assume, oh, well, this person is quirky. She's quirky. It's fine. I feel like all of my female friends who have been diagnosed recently, all very intelligent, all very high achieving, you know, not the typical like smart but failing at school. It was like, no, I hate this. I'll do it, but I'm gonna do the hell out of it because that's how I do everything.
Yes,
But like,
yes. Until I can't do the hell out of anything anymore.
out of anything, and then I can't do anything, and then all my friends think I hate them, and it's
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. I often describe it as my friends self-select. I make initial connections and initial friendships very quickly. Yeah. And I love that, and I love connecting with people. I love talking to people, and then the people that stick around are the ones that often have similar foibles, so are often people who will be running late randomly, or they've gotten distracted, or will have bouncy conversations, or whereas the people who aren't like that often find it like they get upset, or they get rude, or they feel disrespected, and I'm like, I'm really sorry, this isn't personal.
Right. If anything, jumping around, following tangents, to me, that's an indication that we're connecting because we're both excited about what the other person is saying and we're taking it in a specific direction. It's like constantly like meeting, diverging, and then like following each other down. It's like going on a little adventure, but it's a conversation. I love that.
Oh, we get these amazing mental adventures, adventures, and then I come out of it and I'm like, oh yeah, all of these, I've now got these extra connections that have been made.
That too. Things that I didn't think together necessarily, and now I do. And again, my synaptic web is more connected. I like that personally.
I love it. So that, to bring it back, at about the point that everything fell apart, my PhD was actually in Heidegger philosophy and the phenomenology of visual art, right?
Yes.
So I was looking at Paul Klee and the way in which he describes the creation, the movement of the line across the page, and how a picture develops out of that, and how when the audience looks at it, looks at the painting afterwards, their eye follows it and creates that image. So I was looking at that piece of it. But in amidst sort of a few years before this changing point, my friend Will was in the cafe and I was having a conversation with someone over the other side of the cafe, no idea what it was. And I spot Will and I know he's a storyteller. And I don't know why. I have no idea what possessed me. But I stopped the conversation, like both the conversations have been going on for ages, for ages, like for a couple of minutes or whatever. We were mid-conversation and this idea comes into my head and I have to follow it. This impulse, I have to follow it. And I say, I'm really sorry, hang on a second. I bounce across the cafe. Sorry, Will, do you mind if I interrupt you a second? Like, no, that's fine. I'm like, and I've never thought about this before, never considered it before. And I say to him, how would you feel about taking on an apprentice storyteller? I had absolutely never considered storytelling before. And just in that moment, all of a sudden, and I bounce up to him and he's like, yeah, I'm going to be telling stories next month in an Iron Age roundhouse in reenactment gear. We'll sort you out a costume and like pick some like relevant stories, and you can come and see me do it, and then you can have a go. And I just went, okay.
Incredible.
And I get like, we spend like that month meeting up and he helps me sort out some fabric for a tunic, for an Iron Age tunic, and the wool to do the bit. And he sorts me out some brooches and makes me a pair of shoes. And the shoes were my payment for the first session. And he lent me a silver torque that he'd made. And I did about 3 or 4 sessions of storytelling with him. And it just sort of, so within a month of me going, hang on a minute, and it was like falling down a rabbit hole. And I got up there around this fire in this gloomy roundhouse with the straw and the dust, and the kids sat around in their trainers sort of shuffling, and this Will sat down after doing this great long recounting of some Irish thing with great long lists of this person had this magical power, which was fabulous, but I can't remember what it was now.
Sure.
Yeah. And I sort of get up and I'm like, I have never done this before. I have no idea what's going to happen. And it was like standing in a ritual. And I'd done this. I'd done this on my own, in my own private practice. I'd done it with friends, where I'd stood up in a ritual and improvised a description of a deity that we were invoking, or talking about that, because I don't have the time or the head concentration to research it and write a thing and memorize a thing. So I improvise everything.
Yes.
Yeah. So I get up in this roundhouse and it's dark and it's flickery and the kids are all staring at me going, what is this? What's going on? Is this going to be the same thing? And I start telling the story of Rhiannon and how she rides the white horse across the land, and how the prince comes, like, tries to catch her and can't catch her, and eventually calls out her name and asks her to stop. In the name of love is the version I used. And she stops, and it's this sort of magical thing. And afterwards, I'm like, I did a thing. And it felt like it came through me.
Right.
Yeah. Because I tuned into that space that I'd been training in and experiencing for the past several years, of that running magical rituals in a story environment. And it came through from that space. And most of the stories that I tell outside of the Goblin Circus are myths and fairy tales. And they're stories about magic and about, like, all of those components. Hence the book rooting into the folk tales and into the myths. And going, okay, when you've got a story, this is how you find the keys to the magic that resonate for you and open the doors that are in front of you.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised that you mentioned reclaiming, because when I started reading, there were a couple lines I thought, this feels like reclaiming, because again, like you said, that ecstatic tradition, the focus on consent, the paying attention to, again, are these the spirits of your land? Does that mean that spirits in other lands operate the same way? Why don't you engage with them to see what they might want and might need? Again, assuming nothing, like going in open, listening, paying attention, receptive to feedback. And also that idea of UPG, like, okay, we can have all of these stories and folklore told to us, but what are you feeling right now? Because again, we have stories that are hundreds, sometimes thousands of years old. Does that resonate with us now, as we are practicing witches now and engaging in this world? Does it feel the same? Does it need to feel the same? Again, are you having that, like, head tingling experience of being in the moment, of channeling, of feeling connected to powers outside of yourself? Like that, go with that.
Yeah. I mean, you can read the stories and listen to the stories that people tell you for those keys. But once you get to that door and you open that door and you meet the spirits on the other side, what is your relationship with them, and what stories are they telling you? And that builds your relationship. That's not necessarily going to apply to anyone else. Like, if you want to start telling people, like, this is how you do such and such, then you have to actually, like, that's a different process. But for your own practice and your own relationships with them, then you've got to start there.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, this is all, so when I was about 12 or 13, and there was a small group of us that I didn't go to school with, and we picked up a copy of the Spiral Dance, and it was the 20th edition of it. So there were loads of notes in the back, updating and going, I've updated this language and this bit, this mythology about the witch burnings. Actually, we've discovered that's not true, so I've updated that. And this bit was overly gendered, and our understanding has evolved, and the conversation has moved on. So there's all of these bits in there, which I love. I've managed to get hold of a first edition copy, not like a first edition, but one of the first, and comparing the two is really fascinating, because some of the language and some of the pieces in there, you can see her roots in Anderson Fairy.
Interesting. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, which have evolved. So reclaiming grew, the magical strand in that is
Yes.
strong, and it grew out of that place. And that's an ecstatic tradition as well. That's I'm initiated in Anderson Fairy, so that's my heart. And reclaiming is the community and the outward expression where that comes out for me.
Yes.
And then the storytelling is then the outer circle of that,
Yes.
where I'm like, okay, here I can do my personal, my private practice, my relationship with the gods and the spirits. And then here I can do the community work and the ritual and the magic and the transformative work of engaging with the people around me. And then in the storytelling, I can share the echoes of that enchantment out with people who desperately need it, and who will go home to their 9 to 5 and find a little bit more color,
Yes.
and hopefully a little bit more comfort and a little bit more joy,
Yes.
rather than just the grind.
Yeah. Yes. 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 To me, that is like real magical work, right? Are you, again, are you doing inner alchemy, and are you also facilitating those moments for other people? Because storytelling is so powerful. You are engaging with people on a fundamental level, and like you said, to add like those little richness in their lives, like, it's beautiful.
But there's something else about the stories as well. So specifically storytelling, watching something on the television doesn't do this.
Right.
Listening to something on the radio does a little bit, but or reading something, there's a little bit more. But live storytelling, where you're in the space, you are, even if you're listening, you're creating that world, and you immerse yourself in it. Now, obviously different styles resonate differently with different people, so you find the storytelling style and the storytellers that connect with you and that you connect with. But once you find that, you're in this space, and not only do you get that taste of enchantment, but also you actively engage with it, and your mind goes through the processes. So this is where Clarissa Pinkola Estes and her work, The Women Who Run with the Wolves, like, and that Jungian thread and the people who work with that. So this is where that comes in, because when we work through a story by immersing ourselves in it and listening or telling, or by the next step, actively engaging in ritual and magical work and what have you, and analyzing it, but even just the listening and the storytelling, we go through the process with the characters in it, and the parts of our mind shuffle through those things. And so we engage with the different parts of our mind, those different archetypes, the different archetypes in our lives through the story. And so we can be healed by them, even if it's just in that little way. And so so back in, it was basically April Fool's Day. It was, I injured my hip and landed myself in hospital and spent the night in A&E, and they didn't have, they'd run out of beds, so they left me in on an examination table on oral morphine. And it was in an examination room, and the light was on a motion detector, and it stayed on for about 20 minutes, and then it'd turn off if you'd been still for 20 minutes. So I was staying dead still for 20 minutes, and it would go off, and I'd relax, and it'd come back on again. And I have a big fluffy, it's a cat hat, one of the ones with ears, but it's huge enough to go over my headphones, which is why I like it. And it's got pockets in the paws.
Fantastic.
Right. So I was wearing that. I wouldn't take my clothes off, because I'm like, no, I feel vulnerable enough as it is. And I wore this big fluffy hat over my face, pulled down over my face, to try and give me some darkness. And so basically for the past 5 months, it's been now, I've been like, for the first month or two, I was stuck in my flat. I couldn't walk properly. Every step was pain. And so I was sort of stuck in my space going, okay, what can I do in this place? I still can work from home. I do VA work. I do teaching online. I write. So I've got those aspects. I didn't have access to my backup income, which was like working in retail, because we all need backup income.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, but I had enough things going on, and enough sort of money tucked away from since the pandemic actually, that I was okay. So I'm like, all right, what do I do? I'm stuck in this space. My flat is a 1-room flat, right? It's tiny.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like a womb. It's my cave. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to be in my cave, and what do I need to learn? And what do I need to study? And the two things that I looked at, that I focused on, I dove deep into exploring Tantra and embodied sacred sexuality. And so after having worked through the books I write, I mostly write as kind of manuals for myself. I'm like, these are the things that I need. I write these things, I work through these things, I then know they work, and then I tidy them up. And it might take several years before I tidy them up. And then I'm like, maybe this will help other people. This is what I needed. So like I've done the work in Crimson Craft about that sort of healing, those sorts of things. I'm like, right, the next step is this sacred sexuality and these aspects. And the other side of it that I was looking at is singing and songwriting, which I have done in secret. I've been a secret singer-songwriter since I was a teen. I used to, well, since I was a child, but I was too scared to share it. So I've been working through this process, and I've got a mentor that I'm working through this process with, a fabulous lady, and I'm really, really lucky to be in the situation I am. And in writing the songs, I'm sort of channeling these songs and going, okay, what's coming through? And they're all almost all based in stories. And so when I encounter resistance or fear or whatever, and I'm like, okay, let's sit with this, let's breathe and see what my muse, my soul wants to sing about. What would be healing for me in this space? And it uses the language of stories. So one is like a ballad. It's sort of a folky ballad that's kind of quite upbeat, that's asking Baba Yaga for like, teach me how to feed myself and how to look after myself and how to trust my intuition. Like, how do I trust my own guidance through the paths through this forest of fear? And one is that, okay, when faced with the wicked stepmother, like representing various things from childhood, like that's come up in my psyche, how do I engage with that? And these songs are coming out. I'm like, oh, and I'm singing them and then bursting into tears and going through that process, or singing them to myself and then lightening up. And I can feel the way that they're shifting and changing me. And it's the same thing that stories do, but in these short, like 3 minutes of song.
That is incredible.
I'm really loving it. I'm not quite ready to actually share any of the songs yet, but I'm getting to that point. I'm like, I'm so close, because I'm so excited.
Of course, especially again, I have been on this Baba Yaga, I guess, point of like research binge lately, and the stories and like, again, like meditations almost. So of course I want to hear this song as soon as you feel comfortable sharing it with anyone.
Hang on. Okay, because we're being recorded and it's not like it is just you.
Yes.
Maybe I can do that. Do you want to hear it?
Of course I do. I will.
Okay. It doesn't have to...
I got so excited because I have a Baba Yaga plush that I will bring out in our house on Chicken's Legs, so we can all have a little meditation right now.
Let's have a little. Well, it's not quite a meditation. It's not quite a meditation. It's more of a. Anyway, well, you'll see.
It'll be a delightful. We'll have a moment. We'll just have a delightful moment.
Yeah, let's have a delightful moment. And if I go horribly wrong in the middle of it, then you can cut it out. Oh, look at her! She's so cute.
It's pretty amazing.
Oh, I love her. Did you make her?
I didn't know. This was it was an actual like licensed plush that came out, Baba Yaga in her house on Chicken's Leg, and I was like, oh, I need this in my life.
Yes. Are they? Can I get one somewhere? Like, where can I?
This I bought. No, this I bought 2004. So you can probably find it on eBay. But
maybe I'll have a look. I've got to have a look. She's amazing.
It's
Oh, she's
incredible.
stunning. Yeah. Baba Yaga started coming up for a variety of things, and then as said, I was rereading The Women Who Run with the Wolves,
Yes.
and so like that story about Vasilla the Brave, like learning to trust her intuition and go into the dark, scary places.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And trusting herself and entrusting herself to the world.
Yes.
Yeah. And then
Yes.
gaining that scary skull full of green burning fire and taking it home and going, you know what? Discernment and that like burning away of the things that are hurtful and going, no, get out of my life.
I will have to share this with you. I have a couple art pieces that are Baba Yaga and Vasilisa related, and one is her holding that flaming skull, and it's so evocative. It's so beautiful. As soon as I saw it at this comic book convention, I was like, that needs to be in my house on my wall. So
yes.
yeah.
Okay, you mentioned comic book conventions. Do you make a habit of going to comic book conventions? Are you a comics reader?
I used to be. I like anime convention, most of that like nerd circuit
Okay.
I've been interested in at one point or another. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was, I don't know if you know David Max Kabuki.
Oh yes. Yes.
Yeah. So Alchemy, when that started coming out, I went into a random comic shop in a random town that I was visiting and went, oh, what's this about? And found that, and the first issue had just come out, and I picked it up and went, this looks pretty, and I bought it, and
Yes.
that then took me into the world of comics, and of course, Sandman, obviously, but
Of
like
course.
Promethea and
Yeah.
New X-Men of all things, and it's been a while since
Yes.
I've engaged with comics, but yeah, like that Kabuki is just anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Comics tangents. So Baba
Of
Yaga.
course.
So I need
Baba
to
Yaga.
sing to Baba
The
Yaga.
Baba Yaga.
I haven't written the accompaniment yet. I want to do an accompaniment for it, and I haven't written it yet because I'm still learning how to do that.
Yes.
So, okay, all right, okay. Let's be brave. See if I can start on the right note. You're I'm really nervous now. Your heart's on its chicken legs dancing deep in the wild woods alone. You fly in a pestle and mortar, and your boundaries marked in bone. Oh, teach us your ways, Baba Yaga. You know how to feed yourself well, and how to be just and all that you are, and to like all your foibles just swell. Like ADHD. You laugh in the face of pretty. You spit when told to play nice. You're the essence of unruly power, untamed but sure of what's right. Oh, teach us your ways, Baba Yaga. You know how to feed yourself well, and how to be just and all that you are, and to like all your foibles just well. You know the things we've forgotten as we've shouldered the burdens we're told. You know the fire that burns in the skull that keeps us from getting too cold. Oh, teach us your ways, Baba Yaga. You know how to feed yourself well, and how to be just and all that you are, and to like all your foibles just swell. We've come to your door empty-handed. All we've left is a longing for more, and we're searching for all we've forgotten, but we'll work and we'll fight for it all. Oh, teach us your ways, Baba Yaga. You know how to feed yourself well, and how to be just and all that you are, and to like all your foibles just swell. For once we were on wild legs dancing, deep in the dark woods our home, and we flew in a craft of our making, with our boundary marked in bone. Oh, teach us your ways, Baba Yaga, to know how to feed ourselves well, and how to be just and all that we are, and to like all our foibles just swell. To like all our foibles just swell.
Oh, I'm gonna cry.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
I feel like I have been given this incredible gift by hearing this song. Like, again, I am very much like, this has been a part of my, she should clap also for you for that incredible song. Yes, that is so energetically resonant with me and everything I've been going through, and it's just a beautiful, incredible song. I Thank you.
Mutual thank you.
Oh, good.
Well, thank you for being a witness to that, actually. Yeah.
Again, I feel I am honored. I am truly honored. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So that, like, the core part of my magical practice, there's sort of these two parts that to me are a whole. And that is the stories as doorways, as windows, as introductions to the magic, as guides, the stories as guides.
Yes.
Yeah. And the importance and the centrality of embodiment and that pleasure, like pleasure is our guide. So when we make art, when we share stories, when we create, and when we listen, and when we enjoy beauty or sublimeness, like when we have fun with things, all of that, like we're following that part of our intuition, that doll in our pocket that is like, yes, this. And when we feel it in our bodies tell us. And I know there's the flip side of that is when there's chronic pain or trauma or all of those things around it, and finding that balance for some people can be really, really difficult. And sometimes that isn't a path that people can use easily, but it's kind of fundamental and fundamentally there underneath all of that for us as human beings and as magical creatures.
Yes. Oh my, yes.
So that's why I switched from talking about painting to talking about storytelling in my PhD.
You clearly made the right choice.
Yeah.
And again, ecstatic choice of just like, oh no, I need to do this. I need to have this conversation. This needs to happen right now. Like, again, to be open to that, to make that exploration, and then create all these wonderful things.
Yeah. I used to say, like, because I jumped from project to project, or at least it sort of felt like that, or looked like that from the outside. And while I was growing up, I had a lot of things that I'd start and then hadn't finished yet. So there was a lot of people going, well, you never finish anything, like we were talking about. So there's that bit of shame about it.
Yes, of course.
But like, that's me following the pleasure. And every time I move from one medium or one topic into another, I'm not dropping the previous thing, I'm bringing it with me and making those connections. And sometimes you've got to go from painting to storytelling to understand how, when you come back to painting, that you can tell the story and you're learning something with each one.
Yes, exactly.
So I used to say, oh, I just get bored easily. And now I say, I get excited about things easily.
Yeah.
I am in love with the world and I am so excited by everything.
Yes. And that, I think that's such a wonderful way of reframing it, again, to reduce shame and self-insults, and just say like, no, I'm engaged. I am excited. I want to chase all these connections because I know that they're there. If I can't see them right away, I know that they're there. And if I go on this exploration and find out they're not, I've learned something also. Like, that is also useful information.
Yeah. And sometimes, we feed ourselves by exploring new and different things.
Yes.
We feed ourselves, like, there's this whole thing about, we describe things as being failed if we don't do them forever.
Yes.
We're a failed artist if we paint for 2 years and then never pick up a paintbrush again. And I'm like, no, we made art. That just because we stopped, it doesn't mean we failed.
Right. Yes.
It fed us for then, and now we're doing something else. And it's always a part of us because we are all the people we have ever been.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Yeah, I get excited about the world. That's I
This
get
is
excited
great.
and I make stuff, and then I sort of I kind of throw it out, and then
Yeah.
I'm excited about something else. So I'm actually quite bad at marketing, because like once things are out in the world,
Well,
I'm
you're
like, yeah, you
done.
go and play, go and play. That's fine. I'm doing this now.
Ex-
And everyone's like, oh no, you've got to keep pushing that. I'm like, but why? It's out in the world. Can't other people just find it?
And you exactly.
Like it's there for them, it's waiting for them, it's not a problem. But no, I have to do the pushing the things and go, look, I've got this book and this book. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm trying to work out, okay, how do I share in a more excited way, like in an authentic way of like, I'm really proud of this thing that I did and I want it to feed other people.
Yes.
I turned these stories and these books and the songs, and I'm creating them because they're medicine for me, and the artwork is medicine for me, and I'm human. So if the medicine works for me, then it will work for other humans.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yes.
I then publish them, send them out through my publisher or whatever, whichever way it goes out into the world, as an offering, as a gift. And if I'm entirely honest, I don't care if I get paid for it or not, but I need to get paid for it in order for me to keep going.
Yes, exactly.
So but I'm like, like it's out there in the world, and I hope it does people good, and I hope people find
Yeah.
joy in it or inspiration in it, and if they don't, they hand it on to someone that it does support.
Yes.
um and just do your own thing, make your own beautiful things. That I'm rambling now, but I ADHD,
I
squirrels.
totally squirrels.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I want everyone to be like, make the thing that makes your heart sing. Get
Yes.
excited about the things that make your heart sing.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like you have this one life. So chase the
Yeah,
things that bring you excitement and joy.
yeah.
What else are you gonna do?
And if you fill yourself with excitement and joy and delight and enchantment, then it overflows and it feeds the world around you.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Like
Yeah,
that is medicine, as you said, for other
yeah,
people. Yeah.
yeah. Be joyous,
Yes.
and there is then more joy in the world.
Oh my God. Yes, that exactly. Yes.
Yeah,
Oh
I'm
my
sure
God.
none of these thoughts are like, they're not original, but they're ones that I've absorbed from the world and gone, actually, yes, this.
Yeah. Well, again, when you find ideas and thoughts and beliefs that resonate with you, again, I don't care if they're original or not. Are they true? Right? Are they?
Yeah,
Because the way that you express them, the way that any of us express any of these like truths about the universe is going to be different by virtue of the fact that each of us has a different experience walking in the world. There can be many similarities, but no one is wired exactly like anyone else. So it's important to have these conversations about like what, again, what feeds you, right? What is medicine for you? What can be medicine for other people, especially for
yeah,
people who are disconnected from their joy and from their pleasure. If they don't know what their eros is, they're trying to go on that discovery.
yeah,
All right, here's some options. Like chase those, see if they make you excited. Yeah.
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 And again, this is one of the reasons that I talk about the things that I do, and
Yeah.
that I'm open about, even though sometimes I'm nervous about being open about, like, I am obsessed with fairies. That makes me sound like a complete flake. I'm like, you know what? Okay, I'm aware I feel like a complete flake. There is a bit of me that's like, maybe I shouldn't talk about that in the pub or at work or whatever. But as soon as I start talking about it and I light up, and other people ask me questions, and they're like, oh, so actually, it's possible to be joyous.
Yes. 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 That the again, that alchemy, that ability to transform other people's lives just by being authentically joyous. I don't think that gets talked about enough. Like that is powerful magic in and of itself. You are helping other people become alive again, become embodied again, be excited again, to play again.
Yeah.
Again,
And
yeah.
that's what I strive for. I'm not
Yes.
saying that I'm successful in it all the time, but that's what I strive for.
The noble goal, yes.
Yeah. And some people are completely turned off by it. They're like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Why do you feel threatened by this?"
I am always confused by that because the usual reaction I have too when I'm excited about things and talking to people about things I'm excited is they get lit up, right? They get they're activated. And when people recoil and get suspicious, like, oh, is there something that you're threatened by this crumbling? Why is that?
Yeah.
What are you defending so strongly? Is it working for you? Because you don't seem joyous.
Yes. And that's the thing. If it is working for them, then that's fine.
Totally.
But if they want something, if you want something different, then you've got to change what you're doing and be open to taking those steps. And that's so hard.
Of course, yes.
It's so hard, but it's so worthwhile.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Even if fear is sat in the backseat of the car.
And it's fine. It comes along for the ride. It cannot talk to us all the time.
Yes,
that's the rule.
You are not navigating or driving.
Exactly.
Look at the scenery. Isn't it nice?
Exactly.
Here, have a fidget toy. But I did promise that we'd come back to the goblins.
The goblins, yes. Please,
goblins.
Let's talk about the Goblin Circus.
The goblins. Okay, so I was at a comic convention.
Yay. Mm-hmm.
Right, I'd been doing this sort of reenactment, living history style storytelling, telling the myths, loving the fairy tales, etc., all of that jazz. And I'm like, I want to do a show. I want to do a thing, and I've got a bit of a fan of steampunk. And at this comic convention, I come across a guy called Dr. Jeff. Right, and he runs the steampunk tea museum. Right. Okay. Yes. Now, at that point, he wasn't doing goblins. He now does goblins. After I spoke to him about the Goblin Circus, I'm like, maybe I inspired that. I don't know. Maybe it was brewing in the background. Maybe we just tapped into the same thing. But at that point, he did the tea museum, and I think that's still touring. It's fantastic. He also does Fetish Man comics, which are pretty much what they sound like one single page. Very adult, with a character called Fetish Man, and patches, patches with different types of tea on it, and so you can get a patch that's sort of a stripe that goes or a round one that says Earl Grey, and then underneath you can have +2 sugars, +1 milk, soya milk, or whatever, like however you like it. Yeah, to go on steampunk gear. So anyway, right. And this is at the point where I'm still doing visual art for my PhD, and I encounter this thing, and I walk around. It's this great big, it takes up like 3 stalls worth of space. There's these huge boards with these displays of scenes with tiny little model people of like the great battle of whatever in this tea realm, like the Great Battle of Rubosh in 1722, or I don't know. It's completely fictional stuff, and I'm looking at it going, this is amazing. This is absolutely amazing. Like, you've made an entire world with this thing. Oh, okay, all right. I'm like, something's brewing in the back of my head, and I actually got to have a chat with him for about an hour over a cup of tea about art and the experience of making art and all of that. So I was doing research for my PhD. This is great. I come away from it, and I sort of sat down later on in the day, and I just go, and it pops into my head, fully formed, the concept of a goblin circus. A circus where the crew are goblins and the acts are fairy tale characters, right?
Oh, yes.
And so the Goblin Circus became this storytelling show, which was a one-woman, many goblin show, where I'd get up on stage in my tailcoat and top hat, And I still miss wearing my top hat when I do like more serious talks. I quite often have a bit at the beginning where I'm like, this is the point where normally I'd adjust my top hat to let myself know I am on stage and to just give my hands something to do and to distract you while I'm catching my breath and going, oh, I've got to do a thing, I've got to do a thing. Adjusting my hat and straightening my tailcoat and going, look, this is the character. I am a ringmaster. Not a ringmaster, I'm a ringleader, because goblins do not take kindly to masters. They barely listen to leaders. To be fair, they are in charge here. I'm just the voice, but they've forgotten to, or lost, or one of them's drank all of the fairy ointment, which would allow you to be able to see them. So instead of you watching the acts, I'm going to have to tell you their stories. So I then introduce each of the acts by telling you how Little Red and her performing wolves came to be part of the circus. And it's the fairy tales done with a twist. So there's always a shift or a change.
Yes.
And then as the show evolved and as I added in more stories, I
Yeah.
wrote a couple that were entirely new, that were in that
yes.
vein.
Yeah.
Like Kore, the littlest goblin that got trapped by a bad magician. And by bad, I don't mean he was evil. I mean, he was just really bad at it. He was trying to summon a demon, got a goblin, stormed up the stairs of his basement, sorry, his mum's basement, to go and sulk in his bedroom.
Yes.
Yeah, you get the picture.
I love it all.
And I spent about 2-3 years kind of taking this round steampunk markets and like little community fairs and things, and carrying the big top in an acorn.
Yeah.
That you then throw into the center, and the big top grows around everyone, and the acts come on, and then you describe, and it was so much fun. And the very first time I told it, I had a 15-minute slot. And what eventually became an hour and a half to 2 hours worth of material, I told in 15 minutes. Have you heard of Dave the Bard?
Oh, yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Somehow I ended up being the warm-up act for Dave the Bard, and Blanche Rowan and Mike Gulston were performing as well. And it was at this conference. And so they went, oh yeah, you can go on first and tell a story. And I'm like, you've got 15 minutes. I'm like, okay. So I get up there in my top hat, my tailcoat, and I've got a microphone. And Dave and Mike and Blanche have been very, very kind in helping me work out what I'm meant to do with a microphone, because I don't know.
Of course.
Like, can I walk around with it? Probably best not, in case you get tangled up. Okay, right, stand very still. Hold on to the mic stand. Right? And so I start talking and I start doing the story, and I've squashed, say, 2 hours worth of material into 15 minutes. So it is at top speed, intense, weird, that no one has ever heard before.
Yes.
And about 100 pagans in the room. And I don't know if I don't know if you've ever done storytelling, but everyone kind of goes into a sort of chilled, receptive state, and they don't. It's not a back and forth mostly, unless you do that sort of style. Like they're quite chilled and just listening and absorbing. And I wasn't used to that. I was used to kids who get up and interrupt. Right? These were all adults. There was one 6-year-old there, and everyone else was over the age of 20, 30. Like,
yes.
Yeah. And so 15 minutes, full power, full force of my leonine self, ADHD, nervous, rammed into intensity. And I get to the end and there's dead silence. And I bow and I run off the stage, and I'm halfway off the stage and the applause starts. But by this point, I'm still panicking.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, of course, like Blanche Rowan and Mike Gulston come on and they're performing, and I'm sort of sat in the audience going, oh, I hope that was okay. I hope that was okay. And so there was then an interval where I went to the loo and other people were in there, and I got stopped by every other person going, that was brilliant, well done.
Yes.
You could hear a pin, like you could have heard a pin drop. And someone said that to me, and I was like, oh. We'd had talks all the way throughout the day, and the only time that everyone was silent was that 15 minutes. And I think they just didn't know what hit them.
It's amazing.
But I often describe it, and I go, okay, people are like, why goblins? Because you know, goblins are often thought of as being a bit wicked. I'm like, well, because I do a lot of work with the fair folk and with the fairies.
Yes.
But if you say fairies to people, they think of sparkly flower fairies and like stripy socks and all very sweet and what have you.
Yes.
You say goblins, they think of fairy spirits.
Oh, yes. Right.
And so I was grappling with this while I'm thinking, you know, I want to do a storytelling show and I want to share about fairies and I want to share that magic with people and, you know, give context for the fairy tales and things and give that energy.
Yes.
How do I do that without immediately having everyone go, that's for girls. That's for 6-year-olds.
Yes.
And like, you do it by talking about goblins. And this year, back in March, I actually it was an impulse thing that I decided in like November that I was going to basically put on a goblin masquerade. So there was an afternoon market and there were musicians and talks and things all the way through the day. And then we had a little bit of a break, cleared the market away, set up chairs. And then there was the Ominous Folk of Hopeless Maine came and did a steampunk storytelling and music show. A local band called Eclectica came and played music for us. A belly dancing troupe who are fantastic came and danced. ATS is now called Fat Chance Belly Dance Style.
Yes.
Belly dance, put on a show. And then we had a bit of a disco. So we had this huge party and I called it the Goblin Masquerade. And it was done before tourist season because I live on the coast of West Wales, right?
Okay, yes.
In a touristy area. So I put it in March before the tourists came so that it was for the locals.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
And we were after all the pandemic stuff and everyone was desperate to reconnect and rebuild community. And I was like, sod it, let's just have a party.
Yes.
And by calling it a goblin masquerade rather than a fairy tale thing, everyone felt like they could just come as they were. And loads of people dressed up. There was this huge variety we had a genderqueer fairy king that had these beautiful antlers and like fawn type thing and the fawn boots and was like just stunning. And a blue fairy in an amazing gown with these huge wings and beautiful hair and frozen princesses and then we also had kids coming as like goblin hunters, right? The one that turned up as a goblin hunter actually said to me as they were leaving, thank you, I've had such a great time, and next time I'm coming as a goblin warrior. But what it did, not only did it take away the it's for girls and it's just going to be all lots of glitter, it removed the stress of being pristine or perfect or meeting any kind of standard. People could just come in their goblin scruffs and they could dress up in a ball gown if they wanted to, or they could turn up in their welly boots and their cut off jeans.
Yes.
And everyone was welcome and everyone fit because nobody fit.
Oh, I love that so much.
The next week, several people sent me a link to an article that was about goblin core, and it was this whole article in The Guardian or whatever it was that was talking about why is everyone slobbing out and giving up, and this is goblin core. And I'm like, no, goblin core is you are welcome as you are.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And that's the core of the Goblin Circus.
Of course.
Everyone is welcome as they are. It's a home for the misfits. It's a home for anyone that wants it. It's a home for lost stories and for lost people.
Oh, yes.
And there are goblins. It's great.
Of course. I mean, obviously, it's great.
So, yeah. So that is the Goblin Circus. And
Oh.
I am Halo Quin, ringleader and host of Goblin Circus events.
Amazing. Oh my God, amazing. So if people want to find more of your storytelling, they want to find your books. I know you said you have multiple email addresses and websites. List as many of those as you want right now.
So I try to keep everything sort of centered. I like sometimes don't link things in for a little while, but I try and keep everything centered on haloquin.net. So that's my name, HALOQUIN. So Quin as in Harlequin, Halo as in, I am a bright shining light, and I'm. But yeah, so so haloquin.net, and I've got a site, theenchantedacademy.com, so all one word, no spaces or anything, theenchantedacademy.com, and that's where I put courses. I've got courses working, so the book, let's do a plug, but this book, Folktales, Fairies and Spirits, which is about building a relationship with spirits via the story of folktales and how you can start to find your own way into that. That was based on a course, and you can actually take the course, which has once you sign up to it, you've basically sort of got access to it, and I'm going to be adding things over time. So some of the meditations in it are recorded and things like that, so as well as the text, and I'll be adding extra stories and things there. So that's on there. There's also a course on working with the elements of magic, or elemental magic.
Yeah.
So you can find all my courses and my books linked to from there when I update it. And I have a mailing list that you can link to, which is on both those sites, so haloquin.net or theenchantedacademy.com. You can also find me on social media. I'm on Instagram as Halo Quin, on Twitter as Halo Quin. I mostly bounce about ADHD on there and reshare pictures of cute animals because Twitter is full of terror.
Terror, yes.
Yeah. And I'm on Facebook as Halo Quin author.
Okay, great.
Because I managed to ADHD Halo Quin out of the available names.
Yep.
Yep.
But I understand. Again, I understand so much of this on a visceral level.
Yeah. And I should probably say you can order all of my books from your local independent bookshops, as well as the usual suspects. Please, if you do read my books and you like them, put a review up on things, because that helps other people know whether or not it's worth picking up. But I'm also I like it when people put, I liked this about it, because it means that people can go, oh, that will be useful for me, or that's not going to be useful for me. And that's really useful for people. But yeah, go and support your local independent bookshops, because they need it.
Very true. Also, yeah, and I will put all the links in the description.
Yay, links.
Everywhere I publish this. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I've had a great time.
I've had a magnificent time. I am going to be flying high the rest of the day.
Yes, that is what we like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening and or watching. You can find Halo at haloquin.net, also at the Enchanted Academy. I'm going to put all of her links in the description, both on Anchor and on YouTube. Please follow her. She is incredibly delightful. Like I said, it was such a wonderful conversation to revisit, especially affirming as like I said, come out of this intense burnout. If you want to follow along with Personal Pans, I am on Twitter at Personal Pans, Instagram Personal Pans. And if you want to find me, I am mostly on Twitter for now at Kali Butterfly. That's Kali Butterfly. You can also find me at kalibutterfly.com and various Kali Butterfly iterations on the internet. Thank you again for your patience as I've been trying to get these episodes out into the world again. And I hope that you have a playful and curious day.